Hello, everybody. Welcome once again to the More Perfect Interview Series. I am your host, The More Perfect Union. Today, I got a special guest. We're going to be talking to Hudson Town Board Chair candidate Robert Fowler. Robert is an attorney who comes to us by a rather circuitous route through his education and his professional experience. And I'd like to welcome Robert Fowler to the show. Mr. Fowler, how are you, sir?
Good, Mike. Thank you.
For the benefit of everybody's information, let me just go ahead and kill the chill background music a little bit. But for the benefit of everybody who is watching, tell us who you are, a little bit about your background, and a little bit about the office and why you're seeking it.
Certainly. So, starting with a little bit about me, I have a very small family here in Hudson Township. My wife, Nyla, and I have one child in the middle school. And I came to Hudson 7 years ago from the heart of St. Paul. And we joke with people that we're up to 158 reasons why we moved out of Minnesota and then over here to Hudson.
I can think of
And
a few.
yeah, exactly. It's probably more than 158 at this point. But anyway, so I've been blessed in my life to have had a pretty fortunate series of education and background and professional endeavors. So, starting with, I graduated from MIT in 1996 with a degree in political science. And then I went to law school at the University of Minnesota, and I've been a practicing lawyer now for 24 years. On top of that, a passion and hobby of mine is winemaking. And in 2019, we founded Fowler Wine, which is a small craft winery here, right here in Hudson Township. And so that's a little bit about my educational background and my professional. I have two jobs. I tell people, I'm a winemaker and attorney, with the attorney being my primary job. And for the last 22 of those 24 years, I've represented police officers through the Minnesota Fraternal Order of Police. So we routinely deal with local government units, whether that be city, county, or state, and on behalf of police officers. So part of my job is holding local governments accountable when they don't do the right thing in those practice areas. Early in my career, I actually was a city attorney, assistant city attorney for several larger metropolitan suburbs on the east side of the state. So we dealt with things like ordinances and zoning, advising councils and research on, the proper things that government needs to do. So that's a little bit about me. I personally, I'm a hunter, fisher. I love dogs. I have a Newfoundland puppy who's amazing, Maggie. So yeah, that's about me in a nutshell. Now, I think the second part of your question was, why am I running for Hudson Town Chair? Was that right?
Yeah, I noticed that Tim Foster, who's the current incumbent. I guess you're still running against him. He's been on the town board forever. It seems. I mean, it's difficult. We know kind of the challenges, right, of trying to unseat an incumbent. What made you decide that you really wanted to take this particular chair? I think this is your first foray into Hudson politics.
It is my first foray into Hudson politics, not my first foray overall. But so here's the thing. So as I got involved because of my own issues with the township with my winery, I started going to more meetings and started really getting involved and watching. And there just became so many things that I saw that were obvious areas we can improve. Now, I will say this, Hudson Township is a great place to live, and I think if you ask any of the residents here, they would say that. But like anything, it can be better. And I personally feel that doing things the same old way that they've been done for 30 years doesn't reflect the changing demographics of our town, doesn't reflect the changing nature of our people and the changing desires and facts that we face. So I really feel that I want to be a part of the future of the way that we can be here in Hudson Township. And so just I saw these things and I saw areas that I knew we could improve on. And I saw that I could bring my unique skill set to this position and do a really good job. And so I'm invested in this community. This is my forever home, to use a dog term. I don't plan on going anywhere. And I have a young child here, and I just want to make sure that we can make this place as vibrant and as great as it can be. And so that's what really compelled me. So it wasn't like just a snap thing. It was a process that I saw over time, and I just really felt compelled to do it. I mean, I'm a busy guy. I run two businesses. I'm very busy at home with family, but I just felt like now was the time to get involved. And um, yeah, I know it's difficult to unseat an incumbent, but to be honest, I just see that we can do so much better, and that's really what got me motivated.
In your the Hudson Star Observer did candidate profiles for people running for local offices in Hudson. You listed your priority goal is a campaign of restoration, and you had three different specific components to that. Can you detail that for us?
Absolutely. So yes, the theme of my campaign is restoration. And again, Hudson's a great place, but it can be even better. So uh, one, we need to restore pro-business policies in this township. So looking around, if you live here in Hudson Township, you may notice that there's not a whole lot of places you could actually go to buy things that every family needs. Groceries, prescriptions, a shovel to shovel your snow. You have to leave our community to go get those things. And what I feel is that we should be taking those economic driving dollars and keeping them within our community rather than taking them somewhere else. And I talked to people throughout the campaign because I've been outdoor knocking, and I really want to listen, not just go on and on about what I think. And I hear from people all the time that they do want to shop local. They do want more in their community. So that is what I mean by restoring a pro-business policies. We need to create an environment where the local government fosters this feeling that we want businesses. We need to make policies that attract businesses. One of the policies that is very difficult here in Hudson Township is we have a very restrictive zoning code. And this is something that my opponent has championed for the last 10 plus years. And it makes it more difficult for businesses to come in when there's not as many business spots zoned. And the ones that are maybe aren't that desirable or suitable for all these different things. So one of my goals in restoring pro-business policies is talking with the landowners that have some developable land, talking with the community, the business community, and coming up with a more modern, comprehensive plan, one that really addresses the shortcomings that I feel we have with our business community. The second issue is restoring property rights. So people would be surprised under these codes how much things and rights they've already kind of given up, things you can't do with your property. So I can boil this one down just as simple as this. I would like to relax some of those policies so that you can do more with your property and your land to improve it and to make it a really great place for you to live. So it's as simple as that. I'm not suggesting we scrap these codes, but I am suggesting that, we should look at it again and say, what public benefit is this code really giving us? And if there's not a real concrete answer, again, I don't think we should continue to go down a road of, oh, we've always done it this way, if there's not really an analysis of why this is beneficial. And I actually think that these restrictive zoning codes hurts communities because it creates kind of a monotone character. And there's all kinds of articles you can read online about this from different think tanks, et cetera, that talk about it. Um, but basically, it creates a less vibrant community when you have so many restrictions. So that's another piece is the property rights restoration. And then the third and final piece, which is frankly, in my mind, one of the most important pieces is restoring transparency and accountability. And these transparency is something that's buzzworded a lot, but it has real world implications. Let me give you a concrete example. So just recently, the town of Hudson passed a resolution that said we can call a meeting with just 24 hours notice to our residents. And in cases of emergencies, which isn't defined, can be as little as 2 hours. Now, restoring transparency and accountability to me means fostering an environment where you want your citizens to participate. They feel valued, they feel good about coming to meetings and sharing their input. Then it also means that they have information that is readily available to them without having to hunt it down. We live in a modern world where we can instantly transmit information via the web and other sources. So I realize that state law does give the township the right to call a meeting with as little as 24 hours. But I addressed the council last night and said, that doesn't really give enough time for people to, especially, think about the working family. Some of these meetings start as early as 5 o'clock. You have to plan to leave work early. You have to plan childcare. You have to plan to be at these meetings. And what it says to me when you say, I'm going to call a meeting in 24 hours or less notice, it means I don't want you there. I don't want the public to participate. Why do you need just 24 hours to call a meeting? Because they had been doing it, not on a regular basis, but certainly usually it was more than 24 hours notice. And those agenda, when they publish that agenda, it tells you what's on the meeting for the evening. And some of these things really affect and can impact people's rights, and it's important business. So that's one example of transparency. Another example, like I was alluding to, we can put the full detailed budget online in a matter of a click. I was the only one who attended the town meeting, the annual town meeting in January, where we were discussing the budget. Excuse me, December, I think that was. But regardless, I was the only one that showed up.
The only
Um,
the only resident?
Correct. Other
Oh
than the
wow.
elected officials, I was the only one that showed up. And that tells me right there that we don't have this great, you know, sense that the people feel valued enough to come because, and I've been out door knocking with them too. And people tell me, well, I give up going to the meetings because there's no point.
Was
I've
that a
heard that. And that,
I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but was that because the meeting was one of these short-term notice things,
no,
or
that was,
do you just think it
no,
wasn't adequately broadcast out, or information solicited to engage the public?
No, I don't think it was either of those. It was definitely given with enough notice. They posted that one well in advance. But I think what it speaks to is just this feeling from the community that they don't feel valued. They feel that there's no point in going, and their input just isn't valued. I mean, I was the only one that showed up. And the reason I showed up is I had a specific question on the budget. And so when I got there was this one piece of paper that was a budget summary, right? And it basically lumped expenditures into large categories. So when I said, well, what's the legal budget for the year? That was my question. What is the amount of the legal budget? And I was told, well, it's in the general government expenditures. I looked down this piece of paper and it was $435,000 plus. I'm like, that's not the line item for legal, right? You're just lumping that in category. And then I read the document more and it said a full detailed budget is available by appointment with the clerk's office Monday through Wednesday during business hours. And I'm like, wait a minute, why are we making this difficult for us to just receive basic public information? The budget is public. Why isn't that linked on the website so you can tell a citizen, you can trust what we're spending on, here it is.
Yeah,
And
it's
instead of
technically not
hiding
the
it.
most difficult process. I totally get that.
No, I mean, I have three websites, right? It is so easy to put a link on there. It's basically once you have the website, it doesn't really cost anything. So why aren't we being more transparent? That's the question, right? So I just I think that it's very important to not make it difficult to get information. So oddly enough, I really wanted to see that detailed budget, right? So I had to make an open meeting or open records request to the clerk to receive it because I'm not going to make an appointment just to go look at it. I want a copy, right? So I made that request, and 15 days later, I finally got my information. Now, let me tell you how easy this would have been to send to me by email. I made the request by email. If you just click the document on your computer, drag it into an email, and send it to Rob Fowler, it could have literally taken that long.
Sure,
But I had to wait.
they could have sent a read-only document. Yeah, no problem, no problem at all.
Yeah,
Right?
15 days is what it took instead. So these are all examples of things that are not transparent. And transparency is important because it does foster a sense of trust to the people that you're not operating a secret. You're doing things out in the open with enough notice. You're sharing information that builds confidence. And those are all things that frankly cost no money to implement. But that is one of my most important priorities is to restore that transparency and accountability. So I hope that answers your question about the top three.
Sure.
Um,
I think I want to contrast a little bit with your opponent. Um, his top priorities are making sure the plowing and maintenance is done on the town roads. That's, I think most people would agree that's a good thing. Helping residents with services available from the town of Hudson is a little ambiguous, because is there a list of all the services or whatever? What's really implied by that? And then And he talks a little bit about like his prioritization because roads are the most expensive component of what they're doing, according to Mr. Foster. You have to be careful about what you're spending money on for anything else. It seems to be running kind of almost not diametrically opposed, but certainly in opposition to number two, and then completing the town comprehensive plan so that residents will have the town grow the way they want. Right. So to me, historically, I've always seen like comprehensive plans as mechanisms by which the state or the federal government tries to allocate tax dollars, or how towns seek to compete with other towns. And I happen to live in River Falls, and River Falls is going through a little bit of a kind of a tax increase situation with a lot of different things because they're now trying to catch up to what Hudson has done historically. Has Hudson, in your opinion, been playing keep up with the Joneses, for lack of a better word, with other more metropolitan areas, more service related stuff? And has that had, in your opinion, a negative impact on the business community or the residents, property tax values, and so forth?
Well, let me say this. I'm assuming you mean the township of Hudson, because the township, the
Yes.
way the way that our current zoning plan, if you will, and the setup is basically very few businesses are allowed, in the sense that there isn't that much commercial or retail space designated. 90% of our township is either residential or ag res zone. It's probably even higher than that. But so basically, the for the past 30 years, the idea has been, we are going to maintain an entirely rural community that you need to go to Hudson to shop. That has been the mentality of the town board. And Tim Foster is the one who put in these zoning codes. If you look back all the way to 2013, there's an article online from the Republican Eagle. He was championing the fact that he put in these restrictive codes. So I mean, he's been an advocate of that. But this has unintended consequences. The town is so different than it was 30 years ago. We're up to 8,700 residents, making us the third most populous unit of government in St. Croix County, only behind New Richmond and Hudson proper. So we have 8,700 people. And, it's a shame to have a community not have a business community that I can shop local. Put it this way, if you live on the eastern edge of our township, it's 45 minutes just to get to exit two, right? Round trip. So think about that. A family can't buy groceries in their own community. An
That's
elderly
pretty big.
person can't get a prescription filled. So these things are not unrelated. So to answer your question, it's a direct relation to the zoning. That's the answer, is if we don't increase the number of spots that are either commercial, retail, and that's not the only tools in the toolbox. I know you can do a planned use development. I know you can do flexible zoning. But the mentality is, we are married to this code, this zoning code, which basically doesn't allow anything in 90 some odd percent of your land. And that's a detriment to the community. So are we playing catch up? It's by design. It's by design. That's what they've wanted. And now here we are 30 years after Tim Foster started being on this board. And here's the key contrast when you're talking about contrast. I'm looking towards the future. I recognize that our demographics are changing. So many of our residents are first-time Hudson Township residents, right? They're coming from other places, but they're just as important as somebody who's lived there the whole life. And we have to have a plan that says, family, you can come shop here. And not only that, it's not only desire. Think about this. When you talked about property values, right now, property taxes are the basically sole engine by which the town funds itself. So when people say, okay, my taxes are pretty high on my property, well, they're going to keep being high if we don't diversify a revenue stream. If we had a more robust business community, there would be another avenue potentially to offset that. But the town has by design made it difficult for businesses to come here. And even when they do come and approach the town, it's, well, we need this done, we need that done, and it gets to be so overburdensome that I literally have talked to three people when I've been out door knocking that said, I wanted to start a business here, but I gave up. And that's exactly what's happening. And one of these had a tremendous potential community benefit. Let me, if I can, Mike, tell you this story.
Yeah,
I
please.
got an email from a gentleman that I never met. Okay. And he said, I wanted to buy the old Girl Scout camp in town and turn it into a youth mental health wellness center. And let's just stop right there. That would be a tremendous benefit to our community to have something like that in our community because you have to be under a rock to realize that mental health is not the crisis issue facing the youth of this country, maybe second only to fentanyl abuse. So it is an important issue. So
If I
here's a
could, if I could interrupt you, I think the recent events in Nashville at the school shooting in Nashville, so the shooter was apparently somebody that had some emotional disorders and things like that. So whether it's mental health or like behavioral mental issues, I think that really underscores that kind of need, that kind of importance for what you're talking about.
right. And this, when I talk about restrictive zoning policies and how it hurts communities, this is an exact concrete example, a real world example that I want to tell people about so that they understand why it is I think this is an important issue. Think about the community benefit of having that here, right? So put that aside. But instead, you have this zoning code that says, up your ag res, that's a business. And I posted the email that Tim Foster wrote this gentleman on my website. There's a link to it right on the first page. Um, and he basically says it's a business. I'm concerned about parking. I don't think you're going to be able to provide a site plan that meets that. And he finally leaves the gentleman by saying, "Do I think this will work? No, but you can spend the money to try to change our minds." And that is such a wrong mentality
Yeah.
to have. I mean, think about this. If I had been the chair, I would have said, okay, this is a huge community benefit. What can we do to work together to find a solution to bring this here? I would have brought him to the planning commission. I would have called a meeting and talked to the other board members about it. If we needed to change a zone or make an exception or conditional use permit, there was a million different avenues to go down there. But instead, it's no and spend the money to prove me wrong, which is a terrible mentality. And I think when we talk about contrast, I am open to new ideas with a new perspective, right? And I have a unique set of background that is particularly suited for this job. And I want to listen and be collaborative. My opponent, when you're in office for 30 plus years or too long, let's just say, you become resistant to new ideas. You can be resistant to the need to talk to people. You become out of touch. And I think that this is exhibit A of exactly how that really happened. And we lost the benefit as the community. So yeah, I appreciate you giving me the time to talk about that example because it's concrete, it's real. It's how we lost out on a benefit because of overly restrictive zoning. Instead of saying this is a benefit, Tim Foster said, I'm concerned about parking in the zoning. And that is a wrong approach, in my opinion, with all due respect to Mr. Foster.
If I could ask a question, and it does relate kind of to like the longevity in office. There are some specific movements afoot. There's even a constitutional amendment group out to um, uh, to create term limits for our federal officers. Do you think that the state or localities should try to work towards also term limits for people? Because I think there is something to be said for the fact that the entrenchment philosophy that you're in a position for so long that maybe you become less attuned to
Responsive?
the needs or responsive, yeah, to the needs of the people that you're representing. And it's not even to say that it's necessarily an intentional problem. I think people they tend to be when people get comfortable, they tend to want to stay comfortable. Jeremy Bentham said, "We flee from pain and we run to pleasure." Right? I mean, he was a Scottish philosopher. But in the sense of being public servants, I think you always have to be sensitive to the needs of your constituency. And it sounds to me like you're saying that perhaps the amount of time that the incumbent is in has been in on the council, or sorry, council on the board, I have different states, different terminologies for essentially the same thing, but that he is he may be less interested in doing the things that you're advocating for, which is more transparency, and better, better options for you utilizing the property space that you have for both the residents and for business attraction.
Well, let me say this. You can tell a lot about a person how they will be in office by looking at the kind of campaign they run. Okay. Let's compare and contrast. My opponent has put out 8 or 9 homemade signs that are white and spray painted. And I have not seen him out door knocking. Maybe he is, but um, he just has this idea that he's going to win and that almost like he's entitled to the job because he's been there so long. And you contrast with my campaign. I've created bright, vibrant signs to put out. I've been out door knocking now. I think I'm up to 14 sessions with volunteers. I have a website. Opponent does not. I have a Facebook page. Opponent does not. I am trying to communicate. I've been doing podcasts like yours and others. I have been trying my hardest to get the people to at least know what I'm about, to share that information. And so just if you didn't know anything about me or my opponent, right? And you just had to look at a checklist of how, at least the campaign is being run, I'm putting in a lot more effort to be that transparent person to inform everybody about what I stand for, what I believe in. And the message has been collaborative. I say I want to restore Hudson Township for a vibrant future. It's been positive messaging. It's the things that I believe in. I mean, I don't know how else to say it, but I've been out there, and I think that if you didn't know anything about either of us, just all you need to do is just look at what's been done to see how responsive a person would be in office. I mean, I'm out listening. I'm out trying to get a sense of what people feel is important. And I just don't see that from my opponent. And that to me is proof in the pudding that um, he's lost a little bit of responsiveness and just this idea that, well, I've been here forever, I'm going to keep the job and I don't need to do anything. I mean, it's
I
that
think
simple.
I think I've got two other questions. I want to sort of combine them in a little bit, but it gets back to your question of transparency in the budget and understanding where things are, but also how you would factor things like budget prioritization in. You make a specific reference about certain classes that the town board has done, and you think that maybe that money could have been better spent elsewhere. Can you talk a little bit about that and
Sure. So really
how that all fits in?
sure. So what you're really talking about is wasteful spending. Okay. And here's the thing. I believe leadership starts from the top. In my professional year, 22 years dealing with police officers, trust me, I've dealt with a lot of type A chiefs of police, sheriffs, county administrators, you name it, right? And leadership, when you have a work environment that is not going smooth, people are upset, people feel they can't get along, there's conflict, the responsibility for that is at the top. And that's just something that I think most people understand. Now, what happened is, again, this was part of that data request that I made, is the clerk was concerned enough about the conflict or hostile work environment that she had requested that they take some conflict resolution classes to the tune of $3,550 and some change. I have the exact figure in the document. Um, that was wasteful spending because had there been an environment of collaboration, of respect, of working together, that would not have been necessary. And again, I have to hold the person at the top responsible and accountable for that. And so that was money that just was wasted. I mean, should not have needed to be spent. Another thing I referenced in the article, because clearly you've read it from the Star Observer, is I will not spend money trying to chase businesses away from this community. Instead, I want to foster bringing businesses into this community. I only have my own experience, but I got the amount of legal expenses that they spent trying to chase my business out is around $15,000. It's hard to tell exact because there was another case mixed in with that, which can't exactly tell which is which, but roughly $15,000 to try to chase a business that has very positive impacts to this community away. Okay. And so I won't do those things. So there's the one category of wasteful spending, and I've only just began to scratch at that. But the other issue is prioritization. So when Tim Foster talks about maintaining the roads. Yeah, that is an expensive thing. But we have McCutcheon, for example, that is practically falling apart. That needs to be fixed before we put roundabouts in on A right by the town hall. Like we need to fix what is there first and maintain it first before we get into these pet projects. And I've looked at the budget now that I've gotten that back. We are over $1 million in total indebtedness right now today. Looking at some of the recent past board meetings, they're talking about bonding and taking on more debt. And here's the thing, every family knows that you have to live within your means. You have to prioritize what your limited amount of resources are. And we need to do that same thing with the township. We cannot borrow our way into a better financial situation. So like any organization that gets new leadership, if elected, I want to take a pause and look at everything from top to bottom, that budget document line by line, figure out what it is we truly have already committed to and what we might be able to take a look at and prioritize differently. So I do pledge a top to bottom review of all of that. And here's my bottom line. If we are spending taxpayer dollars, it needs to have a public benefit. There needs to be we all benefit from this, not just a small subset or a pet project. This needs to have a community-wide benefit, and that's my overriding concept when prioritizing what's important to spend money on.
Okay. Well, listen, I think we're pretty close to the end of our interview time. I thank you very much for your opportunity of taking the time to sit with me and the More Perfect Union show. And I'd like to just give you a final opportunity to make your pitch. I know Election Day is April 4th. And I think if people look at your signs, they look at your shirt, they can tell that there's a little bit of a theme going on in terms of branding and stuff like that. So make your final pitch if you'd like to.
Sure. Well, the one biggest final pitch I want to make is to anybody watching this, please read more. Please be informed. I have made every effort to put everything out there in writing. I even made a series of videos that are on my Facebook page so that I can talk right to folks and you can hear it right from me what I'm all about. But and so let me, if I can, Mike, give you that website. It's Fowler, the number 4, HudsonTownChair.com. And my Facebook is type in the same things in the search bar and you'll get it. Hudson 4 spelled out, Hudson Town Chair. And if you're not a Facebooker, you can send me an email and I'll get you anything you want. I've been super responsive to anybody who's asked a question. Um, so my final pitch is this. While this is a great place to live in Hudson Township, it can be better. Everyone can be better. Every organization can be better. And I feel like as we have changed over the last 30 years, that I'm a little bit more in touch with the needs of the people. I've been listening. I've been out there. I've been really putting forth the effort to bring Hudson Township into a bright, vibrant future. And when you talked about the orange, my last name means bird hunter. So I hunt and fish. So blaze orange is kind of my
It didn't,
thing.
yeah, it didn't down on me. It didn't dawn
Yeah,
on me that maybe there was a connection.
that's the connection. And I've tried to run a professional and open campaign with a little bit different twist, the orange, the brightness, the full information. And I just hope that people realize that if if I'm doing that now, think about how responsive and collaborative I will be when elected. And it's just you have a choice. You can continue going down the same path with the same ideology that we've been doing for 30 years in a changing Hudson Township, or we can change direction a little bit by having somebody with a different set of skills, new ideas, and wants to be collaborative and involve the community. Those are your two choices. So I would say that's why I would leave it in your mind is please learn more and yeah, please vote. This election on April 4th is super important. There's more than just me on the ballot. We have a Supreme Court justice that's extremely important. Everybody from both sides knows how important that is. We have a school board election, which, there's a lot of money on the ballot this year. There's referendum after referendum on the ballot this year. There's ballot questions. So there's a lot of reasons that the people should be involved this time around. So if you haven't voted, please get to the polls if you haven't voted early. And even though it's forecast for rain on Tuesday, it's important. Get a little wet, get out there and vote.
I think it's totally important for people to understand and recognize that whether you're voting early, absentee early voting, such as that it's allowed in the state, or you make your plan to get out there or take some other people to the ballot box, that is for sure an absolute must that all citizens should avail themselves of. The old saying that if you don't vote, you can't complain. I'm paraphrasing that down into easier language, but it is so critical that everybody be not just vote for your party or somebody that you like as a person. Vote for the policies, examine the policies, do the research and stuff like that. You have provided an awful lot of information beforehand, and I see you glad handing. I saw you at the St. Croix County Caucus. You were glad handing, talking to anybody and everybody about how you could bring your skills and capabilities to that particular endeavor, and then much less. I think that it's commendable that you want to seek this position to help the people of the town that you live in. And certainly, I thank you very much for the opportunity to interview you for the More Perfect Union. And I wish you the best of luck and success in your endeavors. Thank you so much, Robert Fowler, for the
Likewise, Mike.
time.
I wish you the best in your endeavors. I enjoy your show.
If you like the interview you just watched, join us on twitch.tv/the More Perfect Union for more constitutional and conservative views on politics in the United States. Like or subscribe our YouTube channel as well. Take care.